Now, who is this on our fiat currency? They give her the title Her Majesty. You're carrying her around in your pocket. So if anyone says that she has nothing to say with what you're doing in your life, they're full of garbage, they're lying to you. She has everything to do with what you're doing in life and how the laws have been applied to you. It's because of her people, in the form of the Governor General, that these laws are enacted. Role and responsibilities. Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II is Queen of Canada and Head of State. The Governor General is a representative of the Queen in Canada. So, it's very clear who owns Canada. Speech from the throne. I begin by congratulating all parliamentarians on this opening day of the 41st Parliament of Canada on my own behalf and on behalf of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II, Queen of Canada, who sends her congratulations and warm good wishes. Who is the Queen of Canada? Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II. That's who owns Canada. The oath set out in the 5th schedule reads as follows. I, that's your parliamentary member, the one who you elected to represent you. They do swear that I will be faithful and bear true allegiance to Her Majesty Queen Victoria. So they will be faithful and they will bear allegiance to Queen Victoria, not to juridical persons, not to men and women, but to Her Majesty Queen Victoria. That's their oath of office. Black Laws Dictionary. Allegiance. A citizen's or subject's obligation. You see that? Obligation. Of fidelity and obedience. Obedience. To the government or sovereign in return for the benefits of the protection of the state. Allegiance may be either an absolute or a permanent obligation, or a qualified and temporary one. So, allegiance. So, the Queen. She is indeed the head of this state. And she is indeed the Queen of Canada. The Parliament members that we elect in Government of Canada, in the de facto Government of Canada, these Parliament members, they swear an allegiance. They swear an allegiance to the Queen and not to us. That should be a little bit scary. I mean, this is our country. We are the people here. And yet the people who are in the de facto government don't take an oath of office to say we will help the people. They take an oath of office, to say that I will swear my allegiance to the Queen, that whatever the Queen tells me to do, that I will do, regardless of what the people say. That's a scary foundation to build a government upon, which is what our government is built upon. As can be seen, the oath is one of allegiance to the monarchy, not to Canada or the Canadian Constitution or the Canadian citizens. Canadian citizen. Notwithstanding Section 1 or 2, a Canadian citizen. If you consider yourself to be a Canadian citizen, you better listen up. Or a person who owes allegiance to Her Majesty in right of Canada. You owe your allegiance to the Queen Elizabeth, to the Queen of Canada. You have no choice. The Queen, as being the head of state, allegiance is owed to her by the Parliament member, but also by the Canadian citizen. The Canadian citizen has obligations towards the Queen in the form of allegiance. It's a duty and an oath that they're bound by. the juridical personality is bound to give its allegiance to Her Majesty. That's why she's on your money. So the de facto government's duties and obligations and allegiance, they're for the Queen and not for the people. So I will always remember that. When people say, oh, the government is there for you. No, it's not. Primarily and first and foremost, it's there to enforce and do the will of the Queen, not the people. Criminal Code of Canada. Her Majesty's Forces. That's Queen Elizabeth, the one who calls herself Queen of Canada. Her Majesty's Forces means the naval, army, and air forces of Her Majesty, whatever raised, and includes the Canadian Forces. So you notice the word includes there, added with the S, so that means that Her Majesty's Forces are only the Canadian Forces. As you saw, it said Her Majesty's Forces includes the Canadian Army, Navy, and Air Force. So the Army, the Navy, and the Air Force, they owe an allegiance to the Queen. And the Canadian Army, Navy, and Air Force are Her Majesty's forces. They're not the Canadian people's forces. So when you say, oh, it's the Canadian Army, you're not saying it belongs to the Canadian people. The friggin' Canadian people, when you start to understand, we own nothing. They've stolen everything from us. Unlawful assemblies and riots. Criminal Code of Canada. Scroll down. Her Majesty the Queen charges and commands all persons being assembled immediately to disperse and peaceably to depart to their habitations, to their lawful business, on the pain of being guilty of the offense of which, on conviction, they may be sentenced to imprisonment for life. God save the Queen. Governor General of Canada. The Governor General of Canada, official site. The Governor General acts as Canada's de facto head of state. De facto. So, as I always like to say, there is always remedy in law, no matter what the situation is. And the remedy in law is for us to be men. And by being men, we're free of our obligations and our allegiance to the Queen. We no longer have to have an allegiance to the Queen. It is ridiculous to even contemplate or think the fact that you should have to worship or submit yourself or exalt something called Her Majesty and not given a choice, being obligated to do such a thing until you decide. They don't even make you force a person to serve God or to believe in God, but they want to force your allegiance to the Queen. Is that not ridiculous? Criminal Code of Canada, Article 60. Notwithstanding subsection 59.4. In subsection 59.4, it says you cannot use force. You have no right to use any force. So we keep on going. No person shall be deemed to have a seditious intention by reason only that he intends in good faith to show that Her Majesty has been misled or mistaken in her measures, to point out errors or defects in the government or constitution of Canada or a province, parliament or legislative of a province, or the administration of justice in Canada, to procure by lawful means the alteration of any matter of government in Canada, or to point out for the purpose of removal matters that produce or tend to produce feelings of hostility and ill will between different classes of persons in Canada.